Evening, folks. Home for another session from the Wise Asylum. Oh dear heck. What's going down everywhere out there with the fruitcakes? Oh my god, it's just so pathetic. It's unreal. But one thing it does show you is that these networks that were around the EDL, which has been disbanded for 10 years, it's not really under the control of Tommy Robinson. These things have been being set up for quite a long time. And when I was in the local politics, I actually stopped this network from taking root in Accrington. Because a bunch from Oldham and Rochdale came in. They were set up by the council. They had a cafe. All these people were coming in and around with this grooming gangs. Anyway, I made it clear there were no problem with grooming gangs in Accrington, which there isn't. And it took over 2 years or so to pretty much disappear. So we've had no nonsense like that going on up here, thank goodness. But I mean, you look at some of this stuff that's going on. Now I can understand the anger in relation to what's going on out there, and the state's clearly protecting it. And what went on in Southport last weekend or Monday, bearing in mind this came after Stephen Laxley, aka Tommy Robinson, came over from Tenerife, where he lives, excited everybody to get their blood boiling. Then the state came and collected him up under terror, which is nonsense, to get him back away, and away he goes back to Tenerife. And Tommy won't be playing any more part in your rioting if that's what you're going to continue to do, because he's just a puppet. He's not actually there to do anything apart from excite your unfettered emotion. And now he can't come back, can he? Because it's terror. So there you've got him. He's going to talk to you all day from sunny Tenerife and encourage you lot up there that's not really got much grey matter to get out there and get excited and attack the police. And of course, this is based, it's just so ridiculous. You know, there you have the big march on the Saturday. He's over, gives his big speech, blah, 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 shows you a film, excites you all, gets you all cross, and off he goes. Then on Monday, same networks from obviously the higher intelligence realm give some particular young critter the whereabouts of children in a dance studio in Southport. Away he goes. Now, that's the most sinister thing I've ever seen, because all you're getting from that is images of him age 17 and younger. Sorry, not age 17, but younger. They're trying to make him into be some kind of celebrity. No images of him as he were on the day. We had some Scouse guy. You see, this is the official, I'm looking at this as official story out there, there's a narrative. Some Scouse guy coming up saying, oh, we stopped, we did this, we did that, I went inside and come face to face with him. And shit himself. Now, things just don't add up here, you know, it's not adding up at all in relation to this being just an off-the-cuff event. This is a setup. It's on the back of what we done on the Saturday last week in London for the big rally. And the networks that exist out there that, as I said, had stopped here about 3 or 4 years ago, have encouraged everybody to get out. And you watch the Southport, there was a protest there during the week. I managed to get it live, so somebody sent me the link as it were actually happening, so I started to watch it. And basically, there were a group of guys surrounding a mosque. Police were there. Very few police had been sent. That were obviously a setup as well. And you could see instigators amongst these boys seriously trying to get them to come in and attack the police. They did attack the police. I think there were some 40 police injured. But you could see clearly watching that there were just certain players in that encouraging the rest to do things that he shouldn't really be doing. And of course, when it comes to Laxley, he's focused everything to Islam, even though the majority of these stabbings that are going on all over the show are actually freshly imported immigrants. So we don't know who they are, we don't know what they are. There's very few people that were born here, Muslim communities, who are carrying out these attacks. It's in the main, especially of the last year or so, these are freshly imported people, and we have no idea who they are. We have no idea. And then they've said he's from Rwanda. We don't know this. We haven't seen any images of him, only this little kid that they seem to be trying to celebritise. I don't know why they're doing that. It's just obfuscation all the way. It's quite ridiculous that the media are actually getting away with it and presenting it in that manner. You know, it's just so easy the way the whole game's played out. You've got lunatics in Southend having machete fights in the middle of the Southend. I mean, where are the police for this? Because you can see that this is a setup. The whole thing. Today we've had, and yesterday we've had Muslim Defence League gangs of people out there and such. So you can see that this is being agitated from all fronts. And you've got calls for all sorts of nonsense coming in. Let's do this, let's do that. And we'll look at a Lord Fauntleroy in a minute, who's calling down martial law lockdowns because of this rioting. Now, it does seem to be happening in quite a few places, but they're very, very small. It just seems to be knuckle-dragging lunatics. There's nothing better to do. It started looting. So it seems to be that the main impulse for these people is, oh, let's see what we can nick. I watched one today, I think it was in Hull, and they were just shouting, get the phones, get the phones. That's all they were pretty much interested in. So it may have kicked off on that, but what seems to be happening now is kids are just running around bored, thinking, let's go and loot some shops. In my opinion, it's not working as they would have wanted it to work. It's not pulled in as many people to get excited and start wrecking your own nation. You've got Alex Jones interviewing Tommy Robinson. You can see where Alex Jones is with all this. He just wants anger. He wants people to get out and start killing each other. I've seen some very worrying statements from Donald Trump this week, and I mean exceptionally worrying. I watched a video of him speaking where he clearly said, I'm no Christian, but Christians get out and vote. This will be the last time you need to vote when I've got in. That's dictatorship. What's he planning? I've seen reports of him stating that there'll be no more ability to rewrite history. So basically whatever they say is what will be, and anybody that tries to contrary that by any means, well, he didn't actually say what was going to happen, but if he's going to turn it into a law that you can't actually write history that's not in accordance with what nonsense they're presenting, dictatorship. Trump's looking very worrying at the moment, I have to say. And obviously there's nothing good coming from the opposition either. You know, there's a lot of talk about Obama being the Antichrist, but you listen to some of the rhetoric of Trump this week especially, and I'd have to say that's exceptionally worrying. I'm definitely more in tune with this this idea that we have of this coming king of persons, and the power is going to accrue to himself and throw about everywhere and anywhere. So it's interesting and worrying at the same time. But you can tell that this whole game is clearly, it's been kicked off. It's been kicked off by the state. It's straight after you've got the Bolsheviks in. Stormer's going on holiday next week. They've had a Cobra meeting. They've set up 24-hour courts and to whisk anybody away that's out there causing trouble, which is fair enough. I have no problem with that. If you're out on the street rioting, you're not exactly thinking very well. And you know, these kids are running around giving it civilization and England, and you haven't got the wit and education to know what civilization is, son. which is why you're on the street acting like a complete lunatic. Civilization means law, nation of laws, gives you the power to deal with this kind of stuff correctly, not running around like some kind of chimpanzee, robbing phones from shops and attacking people just because you can. You don't copy that which you don't like. And you've seen some of these immigrants attacking folk. You don't copy it. It's not what you do. You don't copy this. It's the state that's pulling this together. It's the state that's brought them all in. It's the state that's protecting them. They're being recruited to police, etc. So you can see what the plan is. Running around, looting and smashing the place up is only going to enforce and expand this state move to give itself more and more power. You've got New Zealand now. So we talked earlier, didn't we, in the year about the WHO treaty that was put out, that it failed. But we could pretty much see that it might have failed in essence, but the governments have pretty much agreed to implement the changes that they wanted. And of course, the beta test for that now is in New Zealand. I put a document up onto the Facebook. You need to look at it. You need to have a look and just breach yourself for what it is they've got down the pipeline. You've really got to get a grip of yourself. You've got to get a grip of your offspring. You've got to sort of educate them a little bit that this kind of behaviour it's not going to bring them what they want. It's not going to do anything in relation to what it is solving what they think they're angry about. It's just not going to work. It's not going to work at all. I mean, in any kind of battle and war, those that kick it off are the ones that lose. You need to remember that. It's not how you play this game. You never do what your enemy wants you to do. And that's exactly what you're doing. Because you're listening to the likes of Tommy Robinson. You know, it's just quite ridiculous. If you haven't seen by now what he is, based on who controls him, then, you know, what they want, the very thing you don't like, the state, this imperial state, is going to scoop everything up with ease. And I mean with ease. I mean, let's just get a little insight. This is what I put up on the Facebook just after all this stuff, because this is what people need to look at. You've got him there. Look, Tommy Robinson. All he's interested in is your money. Purchase my best-selling books. Give me your money while he sits all in the sunshine in Tenerife. Video calling, encourage you to do it while he's sat on his little fat ass. In an island, or on an island that's clearly, we can see in relation to what we've just seen locally with this young lad that's died over there. Tenerife is clearly now some kind of gangster hub. It's some kind of gangster intelligence hub where people are sent to be kept safe, out the way. We can see that. Is it called Jay, I think, this guy? We can see that things are not quite right over there. And this is the guy. You're giving him your money. There was a report last week that he'd spent $100,000 of the money that you'd given him for his battle and requiring King's Counsel. It's, you're falling for it, and it serves you right. But I just put together, it just says you must look at the bigger picture, which means you rise above emotion. Tommy Robinson lives in Tenerife, a major hub for gangsters and intelligence puppets. He was brought over to London to excite and boil your blood on the Saturday rally while claiming the position of peaceful intent. Intel arrested him under the Terrorism Act to whisk him away from your next move, which of course is what you've been doing all week. Bailed, he then fled back to Tenerife, and from there on, he can no longer take any part in the physical way to what he has set off in your emotional field. You are blindsided with emotion to his plight with its strategic move to hold your emotions without him taking part in future protests. Meaning, you're all thinking, oh, what a shame, he's been arrested, he's trying his best. He's not trying his best. That was a move, clearly, to just whisk him away so that you guys are all on your own. That he'll talk to you all day on video, he'll talk through Alex Jones and anybody else that wants to listen to his spiel. You're blindsided with emotion to his plight. Yeah, I've done that. That is, save for plenty of video messages to encourage you to violence and protest while he wishes he was there with you. Of course he's going to wish he were there with you. No, he's not. See it, people. Robinson out of the way, the same intelligence cadre activates one of its sleepers to go and murder 3 children in Southport. The sleeper is given full knowledge of the fact children were to be found at the property. He hopped in a taxi and we all know the rest. I mean, how would a guy like that know that this place specifically has got children in it at a dance club? He would have to be told. Now, on the back of the programme installed by Yaxley Lennon, protesters after the death of the 3rd child unleashed their anger on that instilled by Yaxley. All anger is thrust upon a mosque. Police intelligence ensure only a small number of officers are in attendance, with the aim to ensure the greatest chance for violence against the officers. Those officers can be seen as a sacrificial offering to the ritual. So you police need to start to realise how you're being used. These people that are running you, the no-high judges at 21st degree, they don't care about you. All they care about is that you do what you're told. And you can see clearly in that event, if you're awake, that there was a very few of you sent into something that were clearly going to blow up. And they made sure there was only a few of you. To ensure, or at least to try and get the agitators that were there for these networks to get everybody to absolutely kick off and cause almighty hell, which to a point it did, but nothing like they were expecting. So again, a failure in relation to what these networks wanted, but even so, people let their anger get the better of them and let loose a little bit. It's just not the way. So those officers, you police, have to see yourself as how you're now going to be used in this kind of situation to further the anger, the hatred, and you guys are going to be the ones on the front line, and you're going to face the shit if this does expand as they want it to do. And of course, look at it, 40 of them were injured, but nothing was achieved. Nobody achieved any aim in that day apart from the government, because now they're pouncing on labels, which they can now incorporate into social media for censorship. So if you start talking in a certain way, you're going to be labelled EDL, right-wing, bumf. These special squads that they've got set up are going to be on your doorstep. So they're going to use all this to recreate and advance the censorship even more. So they'll use right-wing, EDL, drugs, thugs and all rhetoric the powers that be wish to be controlled in the coming months on social media. So you're giving it to them. You're giving them the reason to expand the power. And, you've got to take control of all your parts, everybody, your emotion side especially. You can't let your emotions run riot, because that's what they're controlling. That's what they're playing with these scripts everywhere. Otherwise, the powers that be will make you dance, and they will make you dance if you're playing on your emotion. And, of course, RIP to the Southport 3. As outrageous as that was, you've got to see where it's come from. This has come from police intelligence and bigger and larger intelligence arenas. This is what's happening. That's where it's going. And then they present you the picture, say it's all their fault over there. It's as old as time, this stuff. It's not new stuff. This is Bolshevism in action. So let's just have a little look at who actually controls Tommy Robinson. Because I bet you don't know this stuff. The UK is in civil war after riots inspired by Mossad and UK Security Service agent Stephen Christopher Yaxley Lennon, aka Tommy Robinson. Lennon has long worked with the Mossad-run Rebel News outlet. Now, Rebel News were trying to get into my arse years and years ago when I first went on the internet. And I fobbed them off. So that's Rebel News. He's also known for being mentored by Peter Keeley, who operated as a mole in the IRA for the UK Security Services under the name Kevin Fulton. These anti-Muslim riots are perfectly timed with the inevitable Israeli war in the Middle East, which will require global hatred of Muslims to ensure public support. Now, I'm not saying that Muslims are behaving themselves, because they're not. But when you can see the game, what they want you to do, these intelligence services, you've got to bite your tongue and not play along with the game. Okay, you've got to do that. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has already promised he will install more surveillance and facial recognition cameras due to the civil war. So he's calling it a civil war, and it's about surveillance and facial recognition. We've already discussed that the Asda has got it in there. The Tesco, I've noticed, have got the screens, but they don't seem to be picking your facial recognition up yet with the boxes. And I stress the term yet. But it's coming. Everything that's been in the plan and the pipeline is being readied to set off on the back of this that they've set off. So the more you play this game, the further they can install this system. And it's frightening. It's terrifying. It's ridiculous what they intend to do. But if you carry on, they will. And he says Lennon will be arrested again and pushed for hundreds of thousands of dollars to be fundraised. Then charges will be dropped. Well, my guess is he's not going to come back because he's under terror and he's a chicken shit anyway. So I'm quite happy that the strategy employed was get him in, get him excited, we'll arrest him, get him out under terror, he's not coming back. Yeah, now let's wait and see. But my guess is he's not got the balls to come back under terror. And if he does, then that might show itself correct. You know, it's just so he can get more cash out of you. You give him more of your emotional, oh, we love you, Tommy. What a shame, look what they're doing to you. You know, you've really got to see this. You've got to rise above your emotions, ladies and gentlemen. Otherwise, you're just going to, you're falling right for it, right into the trap. Now, let's have a look at what the hoity-toits, the Lord Fauntleroys. You know, we've looked at the Oleander families, haven't we? We've looked at the fact that the majority of aristocracy on these islands are all operating under the Medici Queen because they're all in the lines of the bastard lines of Charles II, whose grandmother was Maria de Medici. So we're operating here for Medici. That's the Holy See. You know, one of the major families back in the old 1500s, 1400s, who pretty much put themselves into the background. Nostradamus was working for Catherine de Medici. And of course, they were working to the insights that Nostradamus gave to them. So we've already looked at that. Now, this is what the hoity-toits are suggesting through a guy called Lloyd Walney, who suggested that the book style restrictions are issued in response to the current disorder in the UK. He says, but what more could we expect from a dangerous blurite? So this guy is cited as a blur bum chum.
I think the government, the new ministers in office, will understand that the British public will back them in whatever measures they feel is necessary to get this situation under control. Hopefully, we can see this petering out now over the next few days, and the extra effort and focus which is being put on forces being able to have effect. But if that isn't the case, I think the British public will back further action from ministers in this emergency to get things under control. I think we should cast our mind back to the days of the days of COVID, where actually the public accepted an emergency situation during COVID and were prepared to back and lawmakers were prepared to support the kind of temporary measures to ensure that basically rioters were not able to claim. Forgive me. Back in COVID, they were prepared to back measures that were needed in that situation. I think they would take a similar approach to keeping rioters off the streets now, given the scale of damage which has been done to communities.
Sorry about that. I'd forgot to actually send it over there, but never mind. I'm sure you're used to me being a complete lunatic by now. So that's what the hoity-toits have decided. Let's pull it all down again and stick everybody in the kennel. Can you see the game, people? You know, if you've been excited for this week and you fell for the game, at least if your mum and dad start talking to your kids, that's the problem these days. It's just mum. And they're too busy playing with themselves and their fingernails and their eyelashes, aren't they, to actually give a shit about what the little Johnny boy's up to. But it's this is the game. This is how it plays. It's nothing new. This is the way it's always been. They have to get you to act the act so they can pull in more and more of what it is they want in. And you can see that they're clearly moving this agenda. The second horse, removing peace from the earth. This is the game, and they need you to act, to do it. So stop it. You're not achieving anything. Nobody's achieving anything, only the government. And they're getting more and more power, and you will suffer for it. And you look at that New Zealand document, which I'll put up under the video. There's no point just going through it on here because, of course, Utu don't like that kind of stuff. But you get an insight into what he's just said, Lord Fauntleroy there, about utilising what they've already implanted in your minds and done to you once, and you all stayed in your kennel. They fully expect you to do it again. And of course, they're talking up the next game as well in the background. The mass murdering pig that runs the WHO is pushing and pushing and pushing already. So you can see that that's also in the mix if they think they can get away with it. And they'll know they can get away with it. A, if you carry on acting like idiots and lunatics. B, you don't realise that although you might be in opposition today, Muslims and Christians or whatever, it's not in either of his interest to pursue this anger against each other, because they'll just scoop everything up under martial law and nobody is going to benefit, only the fruitcakes. So that'd be my take on the week's crazy events. Look at who's supporting it, look who's cheering it on, and see them as they are. They are the people that are a part of this dark, dark network that want to screw you over by having you screw yourself over. Yeah, that's the game. In all these talking heads now that you can see, Alex Jones has clearly shown who he is. Anybody else that backs and supports Laxley and his marauding we're out on all day benders crew, see the game. See the game, you know? Otherwise, you know better than the ones that it is that you think you despise. And remember this, as I said at the beginning, the majority of these stabbings, these killings, these murders are not people homegrown. These people are people they've pulled in from God knows where, and we have no idea who they actually really are. Okay, they might be a funny colour, but it doesn't mean to say that they're following Islam, does it? Just because they say it is. And the fact that they're not showing us any images of this little shitbag that killed 3 young children should tell you everything. It's a game. It's an act. There's something going on. Otherwise, he'd be plastered all over the media. And he's not. Instead, they're trying to celebritize him. And by some stupid, twisted, sick game, have some kind of emotional attachment to this guy. It's just ridiculous. You've got the Olympics going on as the great diversion, which is going up its own ass, and rightly so. But you look at the Olympics, this ceremony that they've done, it's telegraphing. They're telling you what they're doing. I believe the Vatican has now come out and actually responded, but all it's responded to is sort of like, oh, well, what a shame, it's upset people, blah, blah, blah. Does that not clearly show you what the Vatican is? And as I said last week, the Vatican is serving 100% the evil. As Luther said when he nailed his articles to the door, the Antichrist system is going to be brought in through the Vatican. And it is, clearly. Which is why I suggested that there's this rebellion by Catholic people. People should take note, because they're rebelling against the Vatican. Does that not give us a common ground, everybody? Well, regardless of your religion. A huge swathe of Catholics across the world are rebelling against the Vatican. That's got to be good news. And most people are just still stuck and fixed by their own edits or religious divide. And so, it's going to be difficult for even that to make headway in relation to what's going on today. If everybody stays divided, then nothing is going to work. Everything's just going to be knocked off at every point that it sets off by these forces. But move en masse as one body, and we stand a chance. And we're going to look in a bit at how they've usurped our entire core biblical doctrine. And in so doing, we'll also look at how the same has happened to Judaism, the same has happened to Islam, and how it's happened to Christianity. We're all being shafted because of our own ignorance, basically, and putting our trust in people that we shouldn't put our trust in. And again, that trust is given because we're ignorant. We are uneducated. People have just become so low grade, they haven't recognised it. And this is why these agendas have been able to push through so successfully. But what I'm saying is, we need to find common ground. We need to find common ground. The common ground in what we've just explored is the fact that this is the intelligence systems, the empire, moving everything that we've witnessed this week. That's a common ground, because it wants natives and it wants Muslims to fight each other. That's the agenda they want. You're stupid if you fall for it. And you'll fall for it if you're ignorant and retarded. It's as simple as that. A common ground is knowing that that's where it's coming from. The common ground, again, is knowing that they want to do that because they want to implement more power to them. There's your common ground. The second common ground we're going to look at in this, just this little investigation into how deep this usurpation of actual biblical doctrine goes, because we're going to start at the very beginning. And we've already covered in these live streams certain aspects of biblical scripture. We've looked at the Gospels from an astrological standpoint, we've looked at them from a chemical standpoint, and we've looked at them from a law standpoint. And the beauty about the biblical, in its entirety, Old and New Testament, is it perfectly operates mathematically, it all synchronizes with each other, and there's a continuum between the Old and the New Testament. That's the magic of that scripture. Regardless of what denomination you think you are, who's where's right, who's wrong. But the fact of the matter is, the confusion has come through the fact that they've been tampering with doctrine. And they've been tampering with doctrine forever. It's no wonder we're in the mess we're in today. And so hopefully, again, we'll get to see a common ground in that whether you're a Catholic, whether you're a Christian, whichever denomination, a Jew, or even a Muslim, we are all suffering the same deception, which has given these priests or cultists of evil total power and control over the narratives of each of those bodies of belief. So common ground is what we've got to look for. Nothing else is going to work. You've got to curb your anger, reckon with your emotions, and gain control of your parts and yourself again, and think before you start to act in the act that these fruitcakes want you to act. So that's the first part of the Sunday sermon. Let's see who's joined us tonight. Slipknot says, alright, Sean, Jack and everyone, good evening to you, Slipknot. Paul says, good evening, Sean and fellow inmates. Good evening, Paul. Tasha Kens, evening, Sean, good evening to you. BY Music says, evening, all evening, Paul. Andrew says, evening, Sean and the Wisest Island Bunch. Mark says, evening, Sean and all evening to you, Mark. Profiler X, evening Profiler. Happy Camper, evening all. How come there was no grooming gang activity in Accrington? Because there hasn't been any. And as I've said before, back in the early 2000s, I went out my way to befriend as many Muslims as I could here to get a fix and a take on how they live, what it is they they suffer, what their community is like. And so I knew exactly how it works. And there is no grooming issues in Accrington, as relayed by these networks who are presenting with Rochdale, presenting with Oldham. And I'm not saying these things didn't go on over there. Clearly they did, because a lot of people have been arrested. But here we've not had that issue at all. And I made that very clear when I was in the local politics a few years ago. And chased them out. Because I knew what they were. I know what they were. Remember in the 90s, because of my rebellious nature, I mean, I had contact with all the anarchist movements, the Masonic movements, all these subculture movements. I were involved in the music industry. I were involved in promoting the clubs. So I were mixing with these cults. So I know a lot of people that were in these places and what they were doing. Because back in them days, a lot of people just assumed I were on par with that kind of stuff. Because I've always been a rebel. I've always said no. No, thank you, fuck off. That's my nature, that's my character. And so naturally, people like that felt at home with me back in the 90s when I was just being me, but learning what I was learning. So I got a big picture of how it works back then. Because they obviously believed that I was going to jump in and join it up there at the higher levels. So I know what I'm talking about. I know what these networks are and how they operate. So when I saw this bunch come into Accrington, I knew exactly what they were. Exactly. And we didn't need them here. And not having them here has prevented them scooping up enough people around here to kick off that nonsense here. So that's fine. I'm happy with that. So we'll not get into this grooming gang stuff. I'm not saying it doesn't go on. It just doesn't go on here. DJ from 88. Wait a minute. I've jumped up a bit there, haven't I? What are we even showing on the crew? Alexander Milicevic. Hello, Alexander. How come there was no grooming gang? Actually, this says Happy Camper. Yeah. So that's why. Because I knew what was going on. Trump just another Judas Goat. I mean, I'm getting a little bit worried with what rhetoric's coming out of that man now, especially if the Americans are still on board. Because what he's talking now is really rather scary, I have to say. It's clearly a dictatorship that he's announcing. And then you've got to look at this pandemic thing that's going on in the old New Zealand, this new raft of measures. That's the beta test. Remember that it was Trump that kicked this off. So if Trump gets in and takes office in January, then he's just going to pick up where he left off. Because we've got a end of the summer to go through, and then we've got the winter, the autumn and winter. And Riot is always kicked off in the summertime when people are bored or not and bothered. The summer season is always the time that you're most likely to get riotous behaviour. So this is part of the plan. So see what's happening in New Zealand as the beta test that will spread across everywhere. So you need to see this and keep Trump in mind. Watch and listen to his rhetoric and what he's saying, because it's worrying. Profile X says a bloody shite show. Absolutely, it's a bloody shite show. But if we're not careful, it's going to become reality. DJ from 88, evening show, a friend of mine watched a couple of weeks ago when you touched on Divine Feminine. You wanted to know where you come across that and wanted to know more. Touched on the Divine Feminine. Well, these are the studies I took up in the 90s. So I think what I would probably touch on is the fact that when you actually when you've pulled yourself above the three chakras and above the heart and you're dancing with the higher frequencies, what you find is the energies at that level of frequency tend to be feminine. It doesn't say I'm not saying there's no masculine energy there, but the essence of the frequencies at that level are very feminine in the nature as we'd understand it. So given that we know that as you rise up the chakras, the higher frequencies, that's what I experienced. The higher up there you go, the more we'd class the energy as a feminine sort of energy. So that's probably, I think that's what I were discussing. If that's not what you were thinking, just let me know. Because tonight's going to be mainly a questions and answer thing anyway, because obviously I've been very busy this week and I have put this together today. Not really much about the rioting, I just pulled in together what I'd seen for the week and we just thought we'd discuss it. I don't want to rabbit on about it. You know, you either see what I'm saying or you don't see what I'm saying. There's not much I can do about that. So questions, by all means, let's have them. Where are we? Profiler says, this is what the rabbis are boasting about, the reckoning of Edom. Yeah, exactly. And somebody put one to my Facebook, a video of a Jewish woman from way back, and I've seen this before, making it very clear that if Europe doesn't accept the Jews as the Ubermensch, it won't survive. But remember, the Rothschilds are the trustees for the Holy Family, Holy See families. And so the Jews are wound up, they're only trustees. Now, whether the uber elites are actually taking on that ethos, I don't know. But, you know, they want the world to themselves. They've never hidden that fact. And the Noahide system is the way they're going to achieve that. And they're going to take everybody's estates through consent. And that's where Trump's going to come in, you see. Or whomever it is that's coming up as the king of these persons. Solutions are going to be offered. But you've got to consensually hand over your estate into the Noahide Trust. That's when all hell will break loose, because then you're a slave. You have no legal rights whatsoever. You know, when you're a slave, you have no rights. That's it. You're enslaved. And that's the game. That's the aim of it all. Slipknot says 1.618, just another big psyop. Of course it is. It is indeed, but look, people pick it up and it make it real. Profile X, Edom equals the West. No, it doesn't, actually. Edom's actually the Canaanites. It's actually the people that call themselves Jews, when you get into it properly. But we'll not dissect that either. But Martine Perry, we need to find a way to reach peace with all the groups being divided on a common enemy. Yeah, we need a common ground. And the common ground is this, is the empire that's forcing this. So immigrants coming over giving it, oh, you imperial bastards, you're colonising this. And I watched a speech by a black so-called intellectual saying, yes, well, dude, what do you expect? You came over here and did this and now we're coming over here and doing that. And I thought to myself, you're no intellectual, mate. You're talking out your ring piece. Because if you look at the way the empire is dealing with these immigrants now by flooding them into this country, they're being used without realising it, the way that the nations that were classed as the colonisers were being used. Because not everybody in these countries that were classed as colonising were actually involved in the empire. In the same way, not everybody is an immigrant. But if you're an immigrant, no matter which country you're going to, it's the empire that's moving you. It's the empire that's offering you the pet's mean prizes. And they've given you a scapegoat to hate, when in fact, if you believe you hate the empire, then why the hell have you signed up to it and taken its pets and prizes? But, again, you see, it's intelligence. There isn't any anymore. Everybody's retarded. And that's the reason why this just... It runs riot. People think they're smart, and they're not. They're not. And so these immigrants that are coming in, you need to understand, you're working for the empire. In the same way that those you claim you despise for whatever reason of history, the same thing they did, you're doing the same. So you're not fighting the empire, you are it. All this mass immigration since the Second World War has been moved by the imperial forces. The imperial forces created Pakistan by partitioning India. All the immigrants coming from Pakistan were invited here by the empire, to serve the empire. So face the fact, recognise it and realise it. That's it. Done job. You can see now that, oh, right, so that's what I were playing for before. Let's stop. Common ground. We're all being shafted. Because it's very clear in the rabbi's script. They want the world for themselves. Nobody else. Nobody. Just them. And they've never kept that secret. If you've studied the work. If you've listened to the speeches. And they still say that. So nobody's going to get out of here. Look, Islam, I've told you. China has stated clearly. Islam is a mental illness. That's what they see it as. So I've thought to myself, give it some thought this way. That's, how are they possibly going to get us all to move into BRICS? So let's say, for instance, okay, that the state we know is backing this immigration thing, and it's backing everything that's not English, that's not American, that's not Christian, okay? We can see that the empire is supporting everything that's against that. So we can see that, they know we can see that, but they want us to see it that way because they want us to fall out with those that they're protecting. So let's look at it this way. We know China is the new world order, okay? That is the new platform that they want to install across the world. China has said and decided without shadow of a doubt years ago that Islam is a mental illness. They've been pulling down your mosques to the tune of 150,000 plus. They've had your people in prison camps for what, 5, 6, 7 years, taking the organs. Now that's been being pushed out slowly over this last year or two. So they want us to see that as well. So let's just say that imperial forces get the Muslims to feel so confident that they do start enacting the doctrine of the Quran, which is to rape, enslave, and to kill, right? Let's say they start doing that. All the Western people are going to be saying, well, our forces are not helping us. We need China to come in. We need to now come into BRICS, China come in and get rid of these mental illness as they've demarcated it. And I think that's a big part of the future plan to pull the West into BRICS. But again, that remains to be seen. Now also, prophecy speaks in many different formats that at the beginning of this, the Muslims are on their own side. And we, as being not Muslims, have to recognise that at the moment, they appear to be operating for the wrong side. But that eventually, at some point, they see the light. But they're not there yet, are they? So we have to keep that in mind as well. But these points, if we keep in mind, are the means by which we can always be looking for that common ground when it finally arrives. But, you know, what better way to get you into BRICS than to all of a sudden it gets so bad here that you're calling in China. Well, then they get everything in that they want. And I put something up today of a guy who'd been to Singapore and Hong Kong. In Singapore, some places you can only walk on one side in one direction. And if you fail, facial recognition, they tap into your account, deduct credits, and if you've got no credits, they do other things with you. And on the back of what this rating is, you can see that they're calling for more facial recognition. And this is all of us. It doesn't matter what religion you are, what your belief is. This is for everybody. Got to see this stuff. Yeah? There's the common ground. By using your intelligence instead of your emotion, and you start to recognise these other pointers here that are actually there clear for you to see. Slowly but surely we can come to a common ground, and that's the essential here. But fighting amongst ourselves is exactly what the empire wants and needs in order to implement this crazy stuff. So yeah, you're quite right, Martin. Rereading William Carr's book, some good people usurped some of the machinations back in the day. We should do. So William Carr's books. Okay. Kerry Thompson says, love from Ireland. Love back to Ireland, Kerry. Good evening to you. Lewis Dunkley says, evening Sean, girlfriend broke up with me today. Pretty devastated. Oh dear. Well, you know, I mean, look at it another way. We're heading into times now where it's essential for our own upkeep that we are not hanging on to people that are not of like mind, of like heart, let's say. Yeah, I mean, in a lot of cases, these are times at which we're letting go of a lot of people that have served the purpose or are no longer keeping up with you, or vice versa, you're not keeping up with them. And that has to be recognised. And also at the same time, recognise those that have come into your field who may be new, but you're looking at them and you seem to have things in common. You know, everything's being shifted about now. And it's very important that we all as individuals really reckon with who we're allowing ourselves to merge our energies with. So it's going to be a time of partings, and it's going to be a time of re-cementing current relationships and friendships, and also making new ones. So sad as it is, Lewis, and we've all had the heartbreak. I've had more than my share. Enough to have full control of my emotional self. You know what I mean? I don't allow my emotions in that arena to run away with me, ever. Ever. I learned my lesson the hard way many, many moons ago, and I had to have many, many events of it till the final one when I got divorced. So I have full control of my emotions, and as painful as it is, the lesson is you gain control of your heart. And, you know, it doesn't mean you become cold, but you're very careful who you allow your heart to open to. It's as simple as that. And of course today, especially, now that there's very, very few people out there that can be trusted, it's an essential thing to achieve. So, sad to hear that, Lewis, but everything happens for a reason. Try and look at it in that respect. And maybe she's not for you for this next period of madness that's about to take place, you know. So just think of it. Try and look at the positives, even though your heart's breaking at the moment. But you will gain control of your heart if you allow yourself to experience these heartbreaks without running off and giving it the big, oh, come back, and I'll read you back, I love you, blah, blah, blah. Do not ever do that. Ever. Because that works opposite to you. So, sad to hear that, Lewis, but glad you've joined us. LFX gives it the old fist. Mew says, good evening, morning, afternoon, evening, inmates of the White Asylum. For the Sunday sermon, hello, usual crew. How do show? How do moo? Martine says, loving your live streams, plugging the gaps in my understanding. Their plan of hundreds, if not thousands of years is going well. However, if most people knew, we would win. Well, this is it, and you've got to take control of yourself, because that's the only power you have. You don't really have power over anybody else, only your offspring when they're up to the age of about 7 or 8. Then their own little character comes in, and they'll either tell you lots of lies to get on with what they're doing, or they'll carry on listening to you, and you may expand your influence beyond those times. Other than that, you don't have power over anybody. You might pretend you do, you might think you do, and you might be using fear to think you've got it, but ultimately, it's going to come crashing down. It doesn't work. The only power you've got is over you, your choices, your decisions, and how you think and act. That's it. So yeah, agree with that, Martine. Miroslav says, good evening all. Good evening, Miroslav. Cause 1973. We've got the hand, the alien, the satellites and the moon. Good evening to you, Cos. Profiler X says, source Chabad site. Oh, I mean, I spent years studying that stuff. Kabbalah, Zohar, Midrash, all the parts that make up the mindset that we know as Judaism. And I mean, it's not all Jews. It's the ultra-Orthodox gangs that are into this Talmud. But we're going to look at this thing I've put together today. It's exceptionally interesting because, again, if you can focus to what it's saying, again, we can find a common ground, which is essential for all of us. But more importantly, if you've got offspring, it would be a better baton to pass on to our offspring if we can at least open up this common ground that may one day rise itself up enough for people to stand on and say a big no thank you to these fruit bats that are about to unleash the gig that they've been planning for thousands of years. LFX, that a cough from afar, Bill Turner's line. Yeah. Martin says, evening Sean, evening Martin. Mew says, how do we protect ourselves from this new contract that is going to succeed the 100-year contract we've been on? What paperwork do we need to get signed by a notary before we run out of time? So a counter deed is the game. A counter deed beats a deed that's in existence. Now, so I've been working with this couple since March on this council tax. And the problem that you're seeing today is where in the past you've put something in a value that the courts would react. What we're finding now is that they're just railroading, ignoring, pretending it's not happening. And I think what they're doing is just hiding the fact that it runs out end of the year and acting as though it is. So it's imperative that we get this together. Now, in respect of what's been done since March is we've done everything right. I've done everything right. The documents, the paperwork, they've done everything wrong. And now it's coming to a head. So that's been a learning curve because, of course, now I can see what they're doing up to date. But we're dealing with counter deeds here, ladies and gentlemen. Is what we're doing. Now, over the week, I've put some interesting data up about how you protect your wealth, your house, your car, whatever you've got. And of course, it's for you to make your decisions, whether you think it's got value or whether you don't. I'm not preaching that. It's there. Pick it up if you like. It may help you, it may not help you. But there's been I've put a plethora of different ideas up specifically on trusts, finance, etc. To help people. But you're going to have to move on this. You can't mess about. But yeah, it's a counter deed that's the power in order to revert this stuff. And it's very interesting, but you know that I've been on this now for a few years in relation to reversion. We started at the beginning, so we started with the biblical side of everything. You could always tell where I were with it because I've maybe present a live stream as we were going with the data we reckoned with. But ultimately, it comes down to trust law, basically. And it's simplified itself somewhat in this last couple of months. With this experience as well, I've been able to utilise this in the paperwork, and court is tomorrow. So we're going to utilise it in court and see how it fares on the ground, as it were. Because basically the paperwork they've railroaded and ignored. I had a conversation with the receiver last week. And basically what I'm saying is that none of the paperwork is correct. Initially when the claim for the council tax and business rates came, the court address was the court at Burnley. So I knew that was something strange, but we all understand and know that these councils hire the court. So I assumed there it is, that's their address, the court at Burnley. And none of the paperwork was signed off. So that breaks the Civil Procedure Rule 5A, specifically 5.3, which is very specific in relation to court documents and court orders, that it has to have a signature, either wet or printed by electronic means. But secondary to that, it has to have the name of the signature printed so that we know who the person is. And no court document at all has had the wet signature, or indeed a digital signature. So all the court paperwork is in breach of the Civil Procedure Rule 5A, specifically 5.3. So there's your first point in it. Now, when they actually moved to the hearing and adjudged bankruptcy, then the court address changed to county court at Burnley. But still, no signature. So when the receivers came involved, the first point I said was basically, look, we need to see your assignment notice that you've been assigned this debt by a court so that we know we're dealing with somebody genuine that really has this debt assigned to them. They didn't have one. The one they had with no signature. I said, that's not in accordance with. So they requested one from the court. Still not coming. I had an interview with a receiver the other day. Made it clear. Recited the Civil Procedure Rule 5 as I've just recited to you. This young guy didn't have a clue, but he understood exactly what I said. Are you legally trained? I said, no, I'm just a smart ass. You don't have to be legally trained to read words. But I also cited some case law, which is very interesting, and it's, in fact, I can actually recite it to you. Now, this is case law in relation to fabrication, concealment, which has definitely, hang on, I don't need to go there, which has definitely been in play in this game. Right, so basically it's in relation to an offence to the interference with the course of justice, and it's 1979 in Archbold 2002 and Blackstone 2002, and it's cited in the Law Commission's report number 96. And it says, the limits of the examples of the circumstances in which such an offence is committed have, however, in his submission, been fully set out in the Law Commission's report number 96 into offences relating to interference with the course of justice, 1979 in Archibald 2002 and Blackstone 2002. In the Law Commission report, the passages he relies on is a general offence of perverting the course of justice was held to exist in R.V. Grimes, 1968, 3, all ER 179, was confirmed by the Court of Appeal in R.V. Panayoto, and another, 1973, 1, WLR 1032, and is now generally accepted. The boundaries of the offence are uncertain, but it clearly includes the following: fabricating, concealing, or destroying evidence with the intent to influence the outcome of judicial proceedings, civil or criminal, whether or not they have been instituted. Now, conditional acceptances have gone out galore during this adventure that I've been doing with the council, with the solicitor, with the court, and now with the receivers, although the receivers have only had a DSOR so far. So, very interesting and very important data. But there's a plethora of other acts that I've used, and that is, so we've used Local Government Act 1888, Chapter 41.5, which says the council of each county shall be a body corporate by the name of the county council, with the addition of the name of the administrative county, and shall have perpetual succession and a common seal and power to acquire and hold land for the purpose of their constitution without licence in Mortmain. Now, Lancashire County Council has been dissolved. It moved into a society called Blues and Twos Credit Union, and from what I heard last, it's now being run by IBM out of America. So Lancashire County Council doesn't exist. So that means the councils are operating as a building authority by themselves. We also use Local Government Act 1888, Chapter 41.5, Section 79, and it says, all duties and liabilities of the inhabitants of a county shall become and be duties and liabilities of the council of such county. Now, note the term inhabitants. What do they class you all as? Residents. So you don't want to be a resident, you've got to be an inhabitant. So anytime you're using your address, you bracket the number, bracket the postcode, and put a W/or the United Kingdom without the United Kingdom. Very important. I've gone through this on the conditional acceptances with you before. So I'm still using the same process. The conditional acceptance is the way you're not rebutting so much the claim, you're conditionally accepting, but putting them to provide conclusive evidence of whatever it is you're presenting to them. So evidence that this is not enforced is such. So what else have we used? County Courts Act 1984, penalty for falsely pretending to act under authority of a court. Forgery Act, Fraud Act, fraud by false representation, fraud by failing to disclose information, which is against concealment. Because these conditional acceptances have been put out and fully agreed and acceptance certificates put in, the council have failed to give it to the court. I sent one to a judge that ruled first on this service game. I sent him a conditional acceptance, accepted, and he failed to add it to the bundle for the next judge who ruled the bankruptcy. Because within that conditional acceptance, it made it clear that the monies have been put aside should it be proven that the addresser, as I class it, would be found to be liable. So in the concealment of that by a Deputy District Judge Woodcock, who we couldn't find on the Deputy District Judge Register, and when we made it clear to the court we were looking, all the Deputy District Judges on the register disappeared that day. This is what you're up against. So then we had NHS, we had all these other corporate bodies connected to this council sending paperwork wrongly addressed, working in sync with this claim. You won't believe the nonsense that these councils are now employing if you decide to fight the council tax. It's beyond redemption for these people. These people are cursed. All of them. The judiciary, the council, the solicitors, everybody, the investigation organisations that they're employing. These people are cursed because what they're doing is pure evil and totally in dishonour in relation to their oaths. So it's been a very interesting, but albeit very busy few months, since March, in fact. But back to what you said, Mew, the correct status, it's a counter deed. Now, I'm working on that now. We're working on that. Okay, we've got it together. But more importantly, what you need is your long form. Very important, that long form entry. It's important you have that. More so than even any records from the hospital. Okay? Because there's your evidence of absolute beneficiary or first beneficiary, whichever way you want to speak it. And you're coming in as settler or benefactor, because settler and benefactor are the same term. However, the word benefactor isn't in law's dictionary, so therefore it's not a part of the Book of the Dead. But it's the same meaning as the depositor as the settler. So, you take your pick as to what it is you want to use and how you want to put these things together. But it's very important you have your long form for correcting the record, okay? For the counter deed, exceptionally important. Will our correction be worth the paper it's written on? Well, you're better off trying, aren't you? Let's put it that way. Who knows what the future holds, but correct the record, pull back your estate, it can't then go into the merry Noahide Ark, can it? David says, howdy folks, fashionably late as per, no problem David. Lewis says, thanks Sean for the advice, you're more than welcome Lewis, and believe you me, that's not advice that's come easy to me, but make no mistake about it, to gain full control of your heart is the greatest gift you can give yourself, by far. Doesn't mean to say you can't have relationships with people, but you never give them the capacity to rip you to pieces. So I hope you can work with that, sir. LFX says, Lewis, giving it, yeah, exactly. Mew says, Lewis, see it as growth, exactly. Mew says, just sucks. I love her family as well. She's a little ADHD or something. Every time she changes her job, she has this whole thing when she wants to break up and only focus on her career. Well, if that keeps coming up, Lewis, there is a message in there for you, you know. So, you know, easy it isn't though, let's be honest. Yeah, it's all about your character. True words, Sean. Back at you. Lewis, find out here a true test. Absolutely. This time finally let go. It's a shame. I thought I had the one and only. Well, you will find the one and only, Lewis. There's one out there, and everybody's in the same boat, brother. You know, the book script killed everybody. You know, it put people apart. There's a lot of people out there searching for people that are on the same ilk. But the older you are, the more difficult it is, because these older people are full of their own shit. And, you know, if they're not spiritually aware, they're hanging on to their own shit because they can't see past their own shit. I mean, there's a lot of stuff about where you've got these people discussing these things, and there's a lot of women that are getting divorced and regretting it within 4 weeks because they're all of a sudden on their own, kids are with dad, dad's having a ball, dad's carrying on, and they fell into this idea of, oh, you know, you deserve the right to be happy. You know, the feminist garbage. Well, if they're going to get divorced on that, it serves them fucking right. But they're clueless, these people. It's all about the self. They've been programmed to be self. And clearly these are women that have never been comfortable in their role as mother and wife until they've left. And then as soon as X gets a fella, oh my God, I've been quite enjoying watching it because it serves them fucking right. Serves them right for the shit that they give to and create for their family. You know, they're so self-centered, they don't even reckon for a second that getting divorced after you've been 20 years and you've got children, that you're all in place, they're all good and levelled, and off she goes because she wants to be happy, she has the right and deserves. Well, yeah, fuck off. And it's great to see that these males are carrying on with the kids and then finding somebody that they love again. And that's brilliant. Because then for the kids get to carry on being level-headed because they've seen mum for what she is. But it's going on everywhere. So there are people out there seeking, and you will attract that right one, Lewis. Make no mistake about it. Good-looking court, says Mew. Well, I have to say, what I've pulled together for them, it'll be interesting to see how they can deflect from it. Let's put it that way. I was chatting with Craig Sean. He mentioned deforcement. It's a tort if they are wanting to repossess property. Yeah, I had a look at it when you sent it me, mate. Yeah. Musical church yachts. Happy Camper. Alex Jones put out on X about Rotherham. I understand why the people are mad, but they're walking into a trap. Absolutely. Alex Jones interviewed Tommy Robinson. Alex Jones just wants to get everybody out shooting each other. He's a complete lunatic. But then he's a trumpet, innit? And I really don't like what I'm seeing Donald Trump pushing right now, because that's dangerous stuff. Very, very dangerous stuff, and it's showing himself as nothing other than a potential dictator. Worrying stuff, guys, worrying stuff. Right, now I've put this together. It's not massive, but it's intriguing. And again, always looking for that common ground. So everybody might get ready to be offended. But I don't care. Be offended. You might learn something. Okay. Now this comes from a chap, very well educated, supremely educated by all accounts, called Michel Ledwith, and he was a Vatican advisor for 17 years. There he is with the ring around his head. And I have no idea who the others are, but one does look like he might be a pope. Whoever that is, I have no idea. Anyway, this guy was in the centre of it. This guy had all the texts available to him that you could imagine. And by all accounts, If you ask him a question, he'll go into the depths of absolutely everything in a manner that you would be even utterly amazed at the depth of that man's knowledge. Now, according to Michelle Ledwith, the first words of the Bible have been tampered with in order the Heavenly Father be obfuscated and replaced by a plethora of lesser entities, be they earthly kings or indeed spiritual beings. The ramifications of this play has allowed millennia of false powers to be assigned to lesser entities and ensure the world of Satan has ruled the minds of an inadequate expression of man. Now, we all know this, that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Now, I've told you before, I have a major issue with the word God. It's fucked everything. So there, we're all aware of that. Whichever Bible you're reading, that's what you think it says. And because it does. Now it says, the above phrase is well known to all, and yet by the commission of the one... Sorry, that should say omission. So, by the omission of one word has formed a complete misrepresentation of everything, which has cut off man from his source while incarnate in this realm, and thus rendered man subject to the liars and thieves that they can rule in the place of the original Father. In this sense, by default, we are all orphaned from our true Father and adopted by the deceiver. Okay? By one word missing, omitted. Michel learned that the original Hebrew text had been played with long ago and that the text we today may read is likely based on an original oral tale, which is referring to historical incidences that took place around 1,000 years before the original written version was penned. Now, as I've said before, from my studies, the original version as we know it of the Old Testament was penned in Babylon to specifically put one group above all others. That the original written version of what was an oral tradition has been translated from the Hebrew to the Greek to Latin, and then in 1611 translated into English in the King James Bible, which we understand to have over 36,000 translation errors, which it does. That is a long timeline in which deliberate errors have been incorporated to satisfy the ruling elites of the day. And as we have come to learn in our time today, the King James Bible is being shifted to sanctify the corporate imperial empire wrought upon the world by the Holy See families under a divine right to rule. Now, have I... Oh, yeah. I'm actually on board then, look at that. So this is like giving you an insight into how the historical chronology gives us how these things have been playing out. And this is a Masoretic text, the oldest Hebrew manuscript of the Old Testament, 1008 AD. The MT underlines most modern Bibles. So most modern Bibles are taken from the Masoretic text. It says the Masoretes were a small pocket of scribes working at Tiberias, who developed a meticulous counting system for copying scripture. They added vowels and punctuation to the Aramaic Hebrew script of the 1st century AD, as seen in the dots and dashes in modern Hebrew. The Tiberius Masoretes diacritical accents mark 600 to 950 AD. Codex Leningrad Masoretic 1008 AD Masoretic Hebrew script. Then you've got the modern Hebrew 1915 to the present, and English translation Genesis 1, God created it, the beginning in. When dealing with the biblical text, scholars understand that everything operates as a mathematical formula, and so it is difficult to play with the text and it not be seen. Okay, so obviously that's people that are highly educated and spend their entire lives in that mix. So it's difficult from the mathematical perspective to get away with this kind of stuff. It is through the mathematical interpretation of text that the interconnections between the Old Testament and the New Testament are proven as a continuum. But in relation to the Old Testament, or the Torah, the satanic priests have confounded the adherence to the Torah by inserting the Talmud as the interpretation of the meaning. So what that's saying is, back in the day, and this is under the Second Temple, the way the followers of the Torah were taken outside the Torah was through what they termed the oral law, what Jesus called the laws of man, which we know today as the Talmud, but it wasn't formed into a written form until around the late 3rd century, into the 4th. And then it became known as the body of work called the Talmud, but previous to that it was the oral law. And it was from the people studying the Torah, looking for definitions of its meaning outside the Torah, that slowly but surely installed the Talmud into the Old Testament adherents. And it says this is sanctioned the rule by the satanic cults over and above the biblical scriptures. This is what Jesus came to preach against, and to underscore and reintroduce the real law afforded to the original father of all. Now, in the Torah, you're told that God is Jehovah. Now, Jesus came and preached against that. Didn't he say, the kingdom of my Father is within? And I've been babbling on about this forever. There's a massive distinction between the Father that the man brought to us and the Father that existed at its time, which was from the Second Temple. And it was basically the mad god of the Talmud. Okay? Now, the same mechanic has been used to obscure the Quran, which states at the beginning, and it does, this is what the Quran says, that the Quran holds every explanation and detail the adherent requires to fully comprehend its doctrine. What it means by that is the Quran says at the beginning that you don't need anything else outside the Quran to understand the Quran. And I've had Muslims preach this to me before, right? I've had this. And that's why they've held that they don't need to study the Bible, they don't need to study anything else. However, and this comes down to intellect again, and what I said originally, that none of us are up to scratch with the intellect that's required to study these doctrines. So it says, so I'll just do that again. The same mechanic has been used to obscure the Quran, which states at the beginning that the Quran holds every explanation and detail the adherent requires to fully comprehend its doctrine. And yet, the Imams turn to the Hadith to define its essence. So in the same way the Torah adherents went to the Talmud and got a twisted definition of the Quran, the same has took place from the Imams going to the Hadith to define the Quran. So it's the same mechanic, exactly the same. And the Muslims don't see this. In this way, the Imams contradict the Quran itself by seeking reference in direct opposition to the Quran's explanation of itself. It is therefore obfuscated to the pupil. This gives the bankers full control of the religion, because today the mosque is a bank. It is yet another banking system offered up by the priestcraft under the false idea of our origin. So based on this nonsense and shift off the biblical script, this is how the banking system has installed itself into Islam. Because a mosque is a bank. And they'll say, well, we don't charge interest. But they don't charge interest when they're lending it to their own. But they'll only lend it to their own amongst the communities that are going to expand the bank. The rest of the community are forced to give money into it. So they're extorted. So it's just a banking system. This is why the people that build these mosques are wealthy. They're living off your hard-earned cash. The Sharia is thus formed from this obfuscation to which the Muslim submits, and therefore not submitting to the actual book itself, the same way the adherents to the Old Testament submit to the Talmud. And any Muslim alive today knows that if you think about it, you are actually submitting to the Sharia, but the Imams are forming the Sharia, and the Imams are working for the bank. So the Imams are bankers. And they're not telling you and teaching you the Quran. They're teaching you the definition that they've took from the Hadith. And then they're creating the Sharia. So if you're following that because you're not reading the book yourself, you're no different than you're in no different position than the Jews who took on the Talmud. And by the way, the Talmud is laced in the Hadiths as well. So again, that's how they've got the Talmud into your book. Yeah? It's so simple. And this, again, is like I said. So we're all born, whether we're born into Christianity, we're born into Islam, or we're born into Judaism, okay? And we, from being kids, we have it forced down our neck. Now, usually it's by parents, but then schools do it, and then if you're unlucky, you go into church or a mosque or whatever, and you're having it shoved into you that way. Now, let me just say this is how I've seen it, because so what they do when you're a youngster, you're not given the absolute word-for-word book. You're given the overall narrative to certain aspects of it. And so basically they're telling you what certain things in that book mean. Now, for most people, as they're growing, that in and of itself stops them from caring about reading the stuff themselves. Okay? Oh, well, they'll tell me, they know. And you're just following on a belief. But for those that do start to study it for themselves, the programme of the definitions of certain parts of these religions has already been shoved down your neck. So when you're reading it, you're editing it according to those enforced programmes. So basically, even though all this is going on, it's down to us for believing, not taking the time to educate ourselves, and for taking on the edits. So we're not comprehending the things that we take in by oral or by reading words, okay? So it always comes back to us. Now, the Gospel or New Testament suffers the same obfuscation in the idea that one man sits upon a throne as the vicar of Christ. And this can only be so as long as that throne is dishing out Christ's words. Yeah, there's the infallibility. So while the Pope is dishing out exactly what Christ said, then he's infallible. But the minute he steps off that, he's not. And if you're carrying on following it, you've also stepped off. No different from the Talmud and the Hadith, how they've instructed and infiltrated the actual books themselves. Yet since Vatican II, seen in today's supposed Pope Francis, his entire rhetoric is false and contrary to the New Testament, but is 100% in line with the agenda of the bankers. See sustainable development, see the inclusion of homosexuality, see subjugation to subculture rights, demolition of civilization, and the introduction of the climate taxation system, and the rise of the corporate empire et al. That's what the Vatican represents today. It's a banking super wet dream, isn't it? So this Pope isn't infallible. He isn't even the Pope. He's a banker. So you've got the Pope running for the bankers, you've got the imams running for the bankers, and you've got the Jews running for the bankers. Yeah, I mean, that's basically the situation that we've got. Now let's have a look at just how is this kind of stuff. Okay, yeah, we're all born idle, we're lazy, we've been programmed and we couldn't be asked to educate ourselves, blah, 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 blah. It does come back to us. But it always helps if we can all see and witness what it actually is that we're dealing with and how it actually plays itself out. Now, just an insight into how they cross-reference the Old and New Testament through maths, etc. These are the diagrams that come from that. So, 340,000 Bible cross-references. So in the blue, you've got the Old Testament targets, and in the red, you've got the New Testament targets. And look at that, it's perfect. So mathematically, these doctrines are a continuum of each other. They're mathematically perfect. And this is where you get this idea that such could not be of man. But man's tampered with it, hasn't it? So it's the tampering that's then thrust upon us and we don't comprehend it correctly that then allows these cults to take over and run us riot and have us all following the shit, which is why I say that the Catholics have started to rebel against the Vatican. It's very important. It's all the rebellion on the table. And if you're going to be stuck in your own edit, you're going to be stuck in your own edit. There's no common ground. Bankers, empire, they've got into all our doctrines, they're the beneficiaries. So that's just an interesting diagram to show how it all interconnects. And here's another cross-reference. Again, old and new, all matching up. And of course, this is way beyond my sort of education. You know, I've never gone into it to this degree. So everything biblical actually interconnects, which does make it some kind of special book. And we have looked at the Gospels, haven't we? Chemically, it works. Astrologically, it works. And in law, it works. There's got to be something in that, in and of itself, that shows you that you're dealing with something a bit otherworldly. Now, the simple fact is, in spite of all the mathematical references, the priesthood have managed to pull off the greatest of deceptions due entirely to the fact belief in another has become the mainstay of mankind. So we believe others. We believe it, take it on board and act it without giving it any thought. That's the reason they've been able to do it. In truth, we are born. We are programmed the narrative, and the main result of this program is that we fail to actually study the doctrines for ourselves. And if we do, the overriding narrative has already been installed, and so we fail to comprehend what we are reading and insert the overriding narrative they have instilled. Is anybody going to argue with that? That's the way it is. That's what we're all suffering today. Now, what Misael shows is that the original Hebrew text begins with the letter Beth. Okay, that's the letter Beth. And that gives us, so it says, today we are told the Bible begins as below, which is in the beginning God and the earth. Now the earth was blah, 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 blah. And there is the... Is that the Beth? Well, I don't know actually. Yeah. No, it's not. That's the Aleph. So that's who it should be. Even I haven't looked at this properly. So that's what we're told it begins below, but that looks like it's correct. So I don't know what I've done there. Anyway, ignore my nonsense. So basically, it says, Bereshit bara Elohim Heshamayim evet haratz. And the Bereshit, which is the second letter, Beri, in the beginning of something. Be is a preposition, prefix. Reshit is a noun. The beginning, the definite article, ha, i.e., the Hebrew equivalent of the before. Reshit is missing, but implied. Bara, he created, creating. The word is in the masculine singular form, so that he is implied. A peculiarity of this verb is that it is used only of God. Elohim, the generic word for God, whether the God of Israel or the gods of other nations, it is used throughout Genesis 1. And contrasts with the phrase Yahweh, Elohim, God Yahweh, introduces in Genesis 2. Now, we went through the Barbello before, do you remember, the Gnostic stuff. So the Barbello, as we're going to look at in a minute, are probably actually who the Elohim are. And they're certainly not God or gods. Et, a particle used in front of the direct object of a verb, in this case the heavens and the earth, indicating that these are what is being created. And Hashamayim veta haratz, the heavens and the earth. This is a merism, a figure of speech indicating the two stand not for heaven and earth individually, but everything, the entire cosmos. Okay. But this is not possible. So that isn't possible as it stands. As Beth is the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Okay, so there's the second letter. The first letter is Aleph. Okay, and it's silent. So this is where the trickery has gone on. Right? All sacred Hebrew texts must begin with the first letter of the alphabet, which is Aleph, which is this one. So they've omitted a letter and kicked us off on the second letter. Excuse me. Thus, the current translation does not make grammatical sense. It is an incorrect sentence. Now, so that's what we see now. Bereshit bara Elohim Hashemayim vet haratz. Okay, that's what we're told in the beginning. Now, the most common word in the Hebrew Bible is the word et. The aleph is the first letter and the en tav is the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. These two letters are the first and the last, the beginning and the end. And the aleph and the tav translated as the alpha and the omega. So when Jesus said he's the alpha omega, he's speaking specifically about this language. The first and the last letters of the Greek alphabet. Okay, so in the Greek it's the alpha and omega, yeah? The original aleph pictograph looks like a bull. Right? A picture of an ox head. Yeah? But yet, we've all been told it means something else. So if they're symbolising that, they're symbolising that they're actually operating to the correct script. And we are not. A picture of an ox head. The ancient pictograph of Tav is that, a picture of two crossed sticks. Or a cross, which are used as a marker. When these two pictographs combine, we have the meaning an ox towards the mark. Fields were ploughed with a plough pulled behind the ox. In order to keep the furrows straight, the driver of the ox would aim towards a mark in the far distance. This meaning of driving the ox toward a mark can be seen in the letters of the Hebrew word et. Now, so the current translation refers to the Elohim as gods. And I've described it also in my stuff when we're looking at Genesis 1. But when you correct the Hebrew text, adding aleph, this is what it actually says. E Bereshit bara Elohim e Hashemayim vet haretz, which means the Father of the beginnings created the Elohim, the heavens, and the earth. So, in doing the game they've done, they've obfuscated the big cheese, the Father from within, the God of Jesus. Right? And presented us with the God belonging to the Elohim, or the Barbello, which we have looked at, have we not? But that, of course, is Gnostic information. Now, I know a lot of people poo-poo Gnosticism, but if you've not studied it, you're at a loss. You know, there's a lot of data in there that you can clearly see the church over centuries has made sure it doesn't come to light, and they've spent a lot of death on it. So, through the Talmud as well, by the way. So it's the Talmud that didn't want us to know this stuff. So, in its true form, the Father of the beginnings created the Elohim, the heavens, and the earth. Okay? Now, from this we can see that the Elohim, plural, are not the ultimate creator. They are the heavens. They are like the heavens, and the earth are the creation of the Father who sits above the heavens. So here we've got an image of the heavens, let's say. And, sorry, no, that's the Elohim's realm, the Barbello. Okay? Sorry, I got that. So that's the Elohim's realm, the Barbello. Seemed a bit faceless. Didn't that guy that handed over the torch to the week with faceless? And then we've got the heavens. And then we've got the earth. Now, the conclusion. In essence, we must consider that all the so-called scholars, ecclesiastical scribes, masters of the written word, are either inept or playing their role in the usurpation of the ultimate Father by obfuscating his reality. And of course, what are they getting rid of? Christianity. This makes sense when you consider that the written word is something outside of yourself and is thus subject to the manipulations of another. If we take on such as our shining light, then we ourselves have made that choice. So if we take the outside as our light, i.e. the written word, which has been written by somebody else, then we've made that choice. And the kingdom within is always oral. It doesn't write it down when you're communicating with your own intuition, or when you move above the heart chakra, when you're communicating with those higher frequencies. It is a voice. It's oral. That's the kingdom within. So we decide whether we're taking our our light from the outside, and thus are then subject to the manipulations. Difference between the spoken word and the written word. It's why Jesus never wrote anything down. The man did make clear the kingdom of his Father was within. We have to let go of our innate connection with the Father of all things by projecting our own innate qualities to the world outside of ourselves. We have let go. We forego our own power and offer it up as a sacrifice, which ultimately is to be determined, judged and executed by those who have sanctioned themselves as the gods of this world. That is the simulacrum. That is the matrix. So it's the projection, offering up as a sacrifice our inner force to those that control and live on the outside. That is the simulacrum. That is the matrix in and of itself. So, like Jason talks about it in another way, other people. No, that is it. Projecting yourself and sacrificing on the altar to the gods of the outside world. It's the matrix. I mean, Neo's all about that, isn't it? Trust yourself. Yeah? So the simulacrum itself that all everybody's talking about in this other method is not. It's that, outside of yourself. So this false paradigm or matrix simulacrum has given you the idea that you evolved from monkeys. And the clue, of course, is in the theory of evolution. But you've offered yourself up there, out there, and given them to execute it, you believe. Even though you know it's complete shit, you're not a monkey. Although there are plenty of monkeys around today. Clue is in the word theory. He's given you nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, which is absolute nonsense. Total nonsense. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, and that's from Albert Einstein, the very guy that saved this pseudoscience from falling flat on its face, in complete contradiction to Nikola Tesla, who were constantly slagging off Albert Einstein for being the twat that he was. But you've offered your soul on the altar to the simulacrum. They'll judge and execute as they see fit. Who can you blame apart from yourself? And they've given you the Big Bang Theory. Another word, theory. Anybody that believes that has got to be a complete cock, but you've thrown your soul out onto the altar. You'll do as you're told. And the fact E equals MC squared is complete nonsense if you look into vacuums. Doesn't work, it's nonsense. And that saved the day for the pseudoscience, courtesy of Albert Einstein. And then, of course, they landed on the moon. Oh, and how many people sucked into that? Oh, everybody that's thrown their soul out on to the altar of the matrix. Believe, man, believe. There endeth the Sunday sermon, ladies and gentlemen. So obviously I'll put that up for you to peruse. But it's very interesting that, people say Jesus and Jehovah. No, he preached against Jehovah. And made clear the kingdom of his Father was within. Nothing to do with that malarkey. So there again, if we all recognise we're all being screwed over. We're all being screwed, no matter what, because we've thrown our internal self outside on the altar for those to judge and for those to determine what will happen with our energy, our soul. And of course, it's all about serving them. And we serve them by believing their bullshit and believing that they're the all-powerful, almighty fruit bats. Fruit bats they definitely are. And powerful they are because you've given them yours. Common ground. Each of the three religions today are operating for the bankers. All three. There's your common ground. We're all being screwed. Stop believing. Stop listening to nonsense and read your books. Because I've said before, I've read the Quran. Most Muslims I know would be horrified at what it is in parts that it is in there. Because I know that that's not what they are, and that they don't. And again, if you're not going to read it, you're not going to know it, are you? Where are we? 1:48. Oh, we've got about 10 minutes left. So if anybody has any questions, fire away. Twitter's pretty crazy at the moment. The news stories are moving so fast, I can't even keep up. It's very dark energy. Keep off it for a while, Lewis, if you're in a bit of a state, because you're right, it's just negative. And it sucks you in. You get angry at what you're seeing. So I don't go on it anywhere near as much. I'll go on it every now and again for maybe half an hour, and then that's enough. I won't go on it for a couple of days because it's just negative. All the good stuff that were coming up is just swamped now by the garbage. So honestly, it's ridiculous. Where are we there? LFX, Folk News, Deep Folk, Fake, sorry, that's an I in it. Deforcement, retracting the force, says LFX. Dan Boy gives it a smiley face, love art. Thanks, Dan Boy. That I can. Igatha, hello Igatha. Just transcribe the Aramaic version of the Lord's Prayer. The variables are quite interesting compared to the current commonplace English translation. Yeah, it is. You said about debt, isn't it? Debt. So yeah, absolutely. LFX, interesting spelling. Michael. Mycel. Well, from all accounts, that guy's an exceptionally educated guy. Spent his entire life immersing himself in all the doctrines he could get his hands on in the Vatican archives. I'd love to spend the rest of my days in there, to be honest. Igatha, mycelium. Solvamist. I like that, Sean. I'm getting it. Oh, great stuff, Solvamist. How are you doing, mate? And the politicians are in bed with them too. They've all taken oaths to the state, this king of Scotland. The entire judiciary, now our lot, and I can see why they're doing this with this council tax, they're under the National Security Acts of 2023 from last year. Very worrying. Igatha says, howdy, good to be here. It's been a while. Things have been wild. Think I fell in love. Oh, did you fall in love? And who have you fallen in love with, Igatha? Recycling a star pie, Sean. Got to watch this, just got home. Yeah, you need to watch it, my good man. You just got in. Good stuff. Music, tunage stuff there going on. Well done. Sorry, the tunes. Yeah. Honestly, it's been quite a few months, to be honest. But at least I've seen the play. They've shown me every play in this time. And these people are sick. If your grandma, your auntie, your uncles are in civil service today, judiciary or anything like that, never look at them same again. These people are pure evil. Pure. It's ridiculous. But it all works in sync with the Klaus Schwab's game. You will own nothing and be happy. How do you get out of this system? What is being preached to people my age is to get rich and rise above the poverty line. Of course, you have to bring money in, but it feels pointless when you know. Well, it's a breakaway civilization, Lewis, that they're calling themselves. And if you don't have the money, yeah. It's... And Igatha says, a very handsome man with a lovely heart. In other news, House of Commons visits from some Aussies on liability, mate. Recently says all Auspoles will be fired for signing oath to corpse. Let me read that again. A very handsome man with a lovely heart. Well, that's good. In other news, House of Commons visit from some Aussies on liability, mate. Recently says all Auspoles will be fired for signing oath to corpse. So, well, that's interesting. If that comes off to play, that would be good. It certainly would, because we could do something like that here. Because the Constitution continuum's off. That's the lowered Earl Marshall's gig, no Duke of Norfolk. So, you know, I mean, I think I'm going to get very busy in this next few months, doing things that need to be done to the right offices and see what can be done. But I mean, with what we've seen this week, it's quite ridiculous that there's enough chimps out there to rally to such as Tommy Robinson, for fuck's sake. I mean, come on. Louis says, then you think I should acquire assets, but why would I want to hoard resources such as housing or land when there is enough to go around? Well, you've got to face facts, Lewis, and the game is as the game is. If you can accrue, because, you know, you're not going to get pulled into this. I mean, it's the bottom feeders that are going to be the worst hit first because they're already on the system. They're taking a benefit. They're in trouble, you know. That's the ones that are going to be pulled in first. And you've got, I mean, you look at what's going on in the background with this next book script. You're talking about NATO forcing. Now look at what's happening with NATO. They've been on exercise for the last couple of years over in Europe. If they're talking about NATO, you're not going to be any British boys here. In all countries, they're going to be the same. Maybe that's why they've had them all out on these exercises. Russia's just a play, because we know they're just building a new state for the Russian elite to move back to their own land when they demolish Israel. So it's just been an excuse to keep NATO out and then reorganise. And you can guarantee if they're going to go without NATO troops to force, they're certainly not going to be English troops. There won't be French troops in France. There won't be Dutch troops in Holland. There won't be German troops in Germany. Et al. And in America, it won't be American troops. So, you know, Trump's the greatest. You see, if they can get this kick-off here and this hatred between Muslims and Christians right now before January when Trump takes power, if he does, you know where Trump's going? Trump is going right against Islam. Everywhere. Everywhere. And that's the plan. You know, you look at World War III as presented through Albert Pike. That is the plan. That is the plan. So, you know, we've got to think outside the box. You've got to look at what's happening. Don't let it drag your emotions. Like I said, I have to stop on Twitter. I can't stay on it too long. You can't watch these images. You can't watch these videos and not get... You've got to stop. Let it go. It's going on everywhere, but it's just, that's all that there is. It's just so negative. Negative, because that's all they're trying to raise to the surface in everybody. Negative, angry, emotional energy. And that's pretty much all they need to succeed and pull this new world order together sooner rather than later. And it really does depend on us. It does, on whether we act on it in this act that they're creating, or we don't, or we act against it even, but not in a violent way. That's what they need. You know, that's what they're already set for. You can't fight this with violence. They've got all the toys. Impossible. You've got to think. So where are we there? Where are we? So Lewis says, Agatha says, Lewis, install in your will finding value in things other than fiat currency. Value of character, value of talent, gifts from the Creator. Poverty isn't poverty if you have wealth of spirit. Absolutely. The homelessness in London is out of control. I went to the central London for the first time recently. Good Street has turned into our own Skid Row. I've not been to London for quite some time, so I wouldn't know. Wise words, Agatha. Agatha says, I've been almost 3 times before. There are benevolent ways to ensure that yourself and those around you are able to survive, thrive. Key is ensuring info. Knowledge, wisdom, help all rise up together. LFX, for knowledge and wisdom, it requires knowledge and wisdom. Yeah. Louis says, also, Sean, what do you think about that numerology and gematria stuff? Well, it works, doesn't it? It just works. You can't get away from it. I mean, the Bible is full of numerology. The mathematical constructs within the Bible are just ridiculous. I mean, this is where you get a lot of secret societies coming into play. They'll follow a particular code of numerology and gain insights that you don't gain if you're not following that. And that's one thing I was learning in the mystery school. No matter what you apply yourself to when it comes to the Bible, there are different codes based upon different numbers. So that's what I'm saying. It's such a magical book if you're looking at it from that way. Astrology fits, law fits, chemistry fits. It's all in there. But just one little misrepresentation as they've done there. Not only does it keep you all off the game, it's another method by which you wouldn't understand the work of the man. You wouldn't understand that. Because most people think that Jehovah is the God of Jesus. I mean, the Jehovah's Witnesses, for a start. You know, I moved to a place not long ago and I got a letter through the door saying, I'm a Jehovah's Fellow of Christ. And I thought, actually, mate, you're a Jehovah's Witness. You are in the opposition of it. And they don't know this. They believe. They believe because they've offered the soul up on the altar of the outside simulacrum. And you will be judged by that because you're lazy. I don't know. So it's very important, but you can get lost in it, Lewis. It's one of them. You can spend your whole life playing with it and get nowhere, basically. I mean, I became aware of all those stratagems, but I never ever felt that I needed to become a master of any of them, to be quite frank. Because when you're following that impulse from within, everything you need is going to come. Every path you need to go on to cleanse yourself, you're going to be put on if you're following that kingdom within. Who needs the outside? You only need the outside there as a reference as to what the hell you're not going to do. Effects intertwined fabric of this place. Igatha. Indigenous survived millennia without fiat currency central bank systems. Creator provided herbs, plants, medicinal gift, bush, tuck and seed mushrooms. Love conquers all. High frequency wins. Evil begets evil. Absolutely. But, you know, it's so enveloped everywhere now. Evil's going to beget everything. Unless you've got the divine eye upon you. We're all going to face certain consequences and, you know, just live well. Be well. Live your art. Express your art. And try to be as neighbourly with your fellow man as you possibly can, while defending your art, Lewis. I've been studying Masonic architecture and keep seeing it everywhere. The most obvious is the Lincoln Memorial in DC with the Osiris penis obelisk coming out of the Vesica Pisces. Yeah, but the Masonic covers a lot more than just the Egyptian, you know, it's they're the builders, the fifth science, and they basically build the will of the elect. We've covered that before. Solving Sean, what are your thoughts on David Ewing Jr.? I've no idea who that is. Do you know, in truth, I don't play on the internet much anymore. I'm usually just studying specific stuff. Whereas before, my mind were everywhere. I was pulling in news. I just, you know, once the book script hit and I realised it just changed the way that I play now, and less is more for me, I think. Less is definitely more. I mean, before I went at it 365 a day like a mad monkey. And did it for years, happily. It's... You know, these cosy chats on here, we've got 60 people who are interested in what's being said. I mean, you think about it, 60 people in a room. It's quite a conference. You know, I mean, oh, okay, some people have 14,000 million. Who cares? You know, you just watch what they say and they're just talking to themselves and each other. They're not actually listening to what's going on. But we have 60 people on here sometimes and they're listening. 60 people that are, you know, I'm not saying they want to believe what I'm saying, but they're listening. They're going to get something. Unless they're completely fruit bat and they're just on here to try and go, he's a wanker. Well, I don't care either. You can call me whatever you want. He's smart like you. Well, thanks for that, Solving Miss. No, I've never heard of him, mate. Ever. To be fair. It's all over City of London. Homelessness. Not good, is it? LFX operating system. Igatha. Snake that eats itself. Ouroboros. Snake, reptilian brain, basal surviving mode, energy without awkward charisma oil. Within the spine, an open pineal gland, human equals Christ, love awakens, plants the seeds. It does indeed. We've done a chemical gospel on just that subject matter. I think that was last year. So people keep reminding me, and you know it's true, that you go through my live streams and you haven't got a clue what I'm going to say. You have to watch it. Now, somebody suggested that they might actually go through my live streams and present me with the menu of what I'm saying in them. If they do, I will apply them to every live stream so that you can have a look. You know what's in each one. Because it must be difficult sitting here listening to me bat on for 2 hours. But it's not everybody's cup of tea. And a lot of people say to me, oh, don't watch it, I'm not watching 2 hours. I just think, well, it's fine. It doesn't matter to me. It's no skin off my nose. Because it isn't. Louis says, thought on Tony Blair. Oh, pure evil. That one. And I bet his face is coming back. You've got Miliband. I mean, there's a face I never thought I'd see again. Oh, it's the Bolsheviks. Igatha says, bull roarer is also known as the Shuringa and Rhombus and the Rotor, the sacred instrument of initiation coming of age. It has intrinsic communication powers with the astral activates and remembering. Like a playlist. Well, I were introduced into, what would this be, about 2004. So I was working on nightclubs. We were doing nightclubs up. And I met some characters on there, honestly. And there was one guy that he'd been to Australia. And, New Zealand. And he brought me back some Maori music put on dance tracks, and so I listened to that, and it was great because it was like a shamanic interconnection. It was good stuff. But I've had less of them experiences since 2014 when I jumped off. When I jumped off the path because I'd just had enough. And I've just slowly rebuilt built the website, and just got in. They let me back onto YouTube, I think, a few years ago. But yeah, it's just, I don't know where we're going, what we're doing. I really don't know. It's one of them. I don't know. I think I might jump back on the shamanic, to be honest. It's I'm older now. My kids are all older. It doesn't really matter anymore if I go back to that because they have no kids to look after. They're all older. Not that I'm not there for them, of course, but I certainly am. But yeah, I don't know. So I don't know where we're going, to be honest. I'll keep doing these while we can. YouTube have got rid of my AdSense now, so I don't know why they have any intention of letting me remonetize. I don't think they like your life in the mix on the old YouTube. Unfortunately, it's a shame, really, but never mind. Great info and delivery. Thanks, LFX. Always informative with a touch of class. Cheers, Sean. Thanks, David. And Solver Miss, I like your builder stories. They're funny and interesting me. I'm a painter and decorator all my life. Good stuff, man. Oh, I've got plenty of them. Maybe we'll have to just do a Q&A. Q&A one time where we'll just have a laugh and I can relate some stories and not just about building. I mean, my God, my life's been an adventure. And some of them are quite funny, to be honest. I just have to be careful I don't incriminate myself as well at the same time. So, Igatha says, alien weaponry from New Zealand metal band as the Bull Roarer at the start of one of their songs. Same instrument from the Crocodile Dundee. Well, thanks for that, Agatha. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Let's hope we don't have a repeat and this week, next week, with all the shitbags and chimps running around looting. Let's hope people wise up, see the light a little bit, and use their intelligence instead of monkey shit. Thanks for joining. Thanks, mods. And the lurker hasn't shown himself tonight. I don't know whether he's there or not, but if he is, thanks for modding. Cheers, Paul. And it leaves me only one thing to say, really, chaps, and that would be till the next time.
electronic engineering, electronic engineering, electronic engineering.